Hello, warm welcome from Copenhagen. Hope you all had a great summer. We're just about to start this webinar. I think we can all agree that there was not really a silly season this summer, although we had the Olympics. I guess one of our speakers, Célia Belin, will agree with me that that was a major event, obviously, but otherwise we had so many sort of important sort of also political events taking place that we thought that would be a good idea to look upon two countries specifically. So look upon France and also look upon Italy, because many things have also happened there. Let's just say that in France, just to mention one thing, we have a new Prime Minister. We have Michel Barnier having a comeback. So I guess you couldn't call him the comeback kid. As far as I know, he is the oldest Prime Minister that France has had, and he succeeded the youngest Prime Minister that France has had. We also have Italy, where we see many interesting events taking place. There's a discussion going on as we speak about Italy's next commissioner. What position should the commissioner get in Ursula von der Leyen's 2.0 commission? When over the summer, when some of us discussed this, here I'm referring to our two excellent speakers who are both head of ECFR offices. So in Italy and in France, we discussed whether there was this Melonization, whether that was still so the name of the game of European politics, or whether we are seeing a Le Penization, or maybe things have changed completely since the meeting ECFR had in June, late June. So let's hear about that. That's our agenda for today. And with us, we have Célia Belin. You head the Paris office. And then we have Arturo Varvelli, who heads the office in Rome. And I think we'll start with you, Célia. What's happening in France now that we have a new Prime Minister, and what's the role of Marine Le Pen in all this? And thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Lykke, and hopefully you hear me well, because we had trouble with the connection. So just wave or cut me short if that's not the case anymore. So indeed, we have a new Prime Minister, and this has been a long time coming. Emmanuel Macron took more than 50 days in appointing the Prime Minister. And it might not seem such a long time in parliamentary democracies when people are used to coalitions making. In the French system, this is totally unprecedented. It's the first time in the Fifth Republic that it takes so much time, and that we are having an acting current government that was taking care of current affairs, but not in a position of really governing. That was partly the reason of the Olympics, because in many ways there was an understanding that politics should be set aside, and we all lived through what we have come to call the enchanted parenthesis, la parenthèse enchantée, which we all lived through, and I can attest that it was the case for a minute there. We forgot all our troubles. It was just wonderful, but it's over, and we have a new Prime Minister. And a new Prime Minister doesn't mean a new government, and it doesn't mean that we have any clue where this Prime Minister is going to go. And you have two ways to view this Prime Minister. The way that Macron would want us to view it, which is that he's a minister of compromise, that he's the only one, a sort of very center right, that is capable of finding a governing majority from center left to center right and traditional right altogether. But the view from the opposition, which is at this point the leftist bloc, and partly as well the far right, is that it's actually a right-wing government that is possibly the least legitimate, given that his party, Les Républicains, actually came in fourth position after everybody else did not win the elections. In neither form did they win the election, and that it can only govern with tacit support from the far right. So in just in one sentence, the lesson of the snap elections was that the French didn't say who they wanted to govern. The only thing they said who they didn't want to govern, which was the far right. They said no to the far right, at 60-70% of the French population said no. But the rest is just for everyone to guess. And the criticism potentially of this governing team that might be coming into place is, are they really going to govern with this idea that the French said no to the far right? Or do they have to accommodate somehow because Le Pen is breathing down their neck and because she will keep this sort of veto power over the government, in the fact that she can align with the leftist bloc and censure this new government? So a lot of ways to seeing this new governing team coming into power, which is not as clarifying as we would have hoped.
Thank you very much. And when do you think we'll then get a new government?
So this could happen quickly. I think the consultations are going on now. So possibly, you know, it's usually on a Wednesday morning. So it could be or as soon as this Wednesday. But I think Michel Barnier, knowing that he represents the right, will want to, or the center right, will want to see whether he can get any, you know, former socialist ministers, any former Green, you know, former ministers of any kind coming from the Green Party, any way he would be able to widen his base. At this point, it's a little bit unlikely because we've seen, you know, including François Hollande, former French president, who said this morning that he will vote to censure this government as soon as it is in place. The reason to do that, because now he's an MP, by the way, just got elected. The reason is that the leftist coalition considers that Macron has not respected the results of the election, that even if the leftist bloc was not majoritarian, it was still the first bloc sitting, you know, slightly ahead of the centrist bloc and the far right bloc, and that Macron, in his constitutional role as president, should have appointed someone from their ranks. Instead of doing that, went to find his own, you know, governing majority as he saw fit. So, so we might be able to know who the team is this week or next week, but it doesn't mean that we will know whether this is a stable coalition, a stable governing team, and whether it be able to do the important stuff it has to do, and in particular the budget, which is the next, you know, stopover in the fall.
And before we move to Rome, the role of Marine Le Pen in all this, what's her strategy, what's her maybe tactic would be a better word with regards to Michel Barnier?
So it's been a bit of a roller coaster for Marine Le Pen. She came out very strong from the European elections, was talked about as, you know, the new major force in France, and then got a disappointing result in the snap elections, even though she gained more than 50% of the seats she had prior to the election. So she really gained ground in the National Assembly. But because she failed to be the first party, she was unable to really claim victory. So after a summer where they were a bit passive, they concentrated on the European game, which I think we'll discuss later. After that, Marine Le Pen has now sort of, and her party, rediscovered the power they have in the sort of abstaining role that they're giving themselves. So by and large, what they're going to do now is abstain. And they're going to, by their abstention, they will allow Barnier to govern. But basically what they're saying is that their abstention is conditional to Barnier integrating part of their platform. And so Barnier has potentially no choice. Let's see if he's a skilled politician or not. Potentially no choice but to integrate some of their views on security, on immigration, on possibly inflation, on some of the topics that they may care about. Otherwise, he would face the risk of seeing them join the opposition, which is the left, into a into censuring. So basically, this will be a centrist bloc plus right-wing government under with a leftist opposition, but under the pressure of the far right, which will play its, I'll abstain until I'll kill you, right? So this type of things, which is a sort of, Damocles sword on top of Barnier's head, which is a smart political position to have and very uncomfortable for Michel Barnier.
Well, as you know, I mean, I'm standing here in Denmark. We have a completely different sort of tradition of coalition politics. So for us, it doesn't sound that sort of novel, but I'm sure, I mean, obviously it is very much in France. But let's go to Rome. What has happened over the summer?
Oh, thank you very much, allow me a joke. So because listening to Célia, it seems that it's Macron who has opted for a Melonization of the French government, more than Le Pen. No, talking about the situation in Italy. To analyze the situation, in particular between Meloni and von der Leyen, and between the Italian government and the EU Commission more in general, we have to start from the fact, from what Meloni decided to do in the last June and last July, that namely not to vote for Ursula von der Leyen, because Meloni, as head of the Italian government, abstained on von der Leyen and as head of her party, Brothers of Italy. She even decided to vote against her. And the decision, this kind of decision, comes from a sort of double disappointment or double disappointment sentiment. The first disappointment is to have won the election in Italy, but to have lost the election at the European level. European rights in general, that she wanted to lead, because there was this goal, this political aim. The right did not get enough votes, to be essential in forming a new majority in the European Parliament. And she wanted to export the Italian model, that is center plus right, to the European Parliament. This didn't happen. So, and the second frustration is the fact that exactly for this reason, for the first reason, Macron and Scholz took advantage of this situation, tried to exclude Meloni and the right-winger party in general from consultation on European power equilibrium, European power structures, the nominees, etc. It was quite normal, I think, because there is a role in the democracy between opposition and majority, but Meloni was in some way offended by and this was also the result of her politics in the last 2 years, because in the last 2 years Meloni missed in creating a good relation with both Macron and Scholz. Now there is the question of the commissioner, the Italian commissioner inside the Ursula majority, inside the Ursula Commission, and this is quite difficult, because it's one of the main country, Italy, that is proposing a commissioner from the political opposition. The Italian government will ask for an important economic portfolio. It's quite surreal that an economic portfolio and control of the next generation EU funds in particular is given to the country that received the most, and is currently, because Italy is currently asking for a change in the deadline, for example. And in addition, in the coming weeks, the Italian government will have to tackle structural reforms in order to return to the levels of public spending required by the European Commission, required by the European Pacts, etc. So this portfolio could create a little bit friction and tension, as Raffaele Fitto, would be, that is the man who was nominated by Meloni, would be in the middle between Meloni and the European rules on the economy. On one side, we have to be honest, Raffaele Fitto is a very moderate figure within Fratelli. He left Berlusconi years ago for personal reason, etc., rather than political reason, and was one of the founders of the Meloni. Brothers of Italy does not only cater from fascists, etc., but is a broader political party that includes also personality from the center. And Fitto is one of these personalities. Fitto comes from the center, from the EPP party, from Forza Italia. He has an excellent relation, in particular, with Manfred Weber. Weber was in Italy weeks ago. They have conversation between Meloni, Fitto, and Weber. So the appointment of Raffaele Fitto is likely an attempt to smooth things over with Ursula von der Leyen by the Meloni government. At the same time, probably, given the European situation with a lot of fragilities inside the main EU country members, from Germany to France, and Célia talk about this, Ursula von der Leyen could also agree to have Raffaele Fitto with an economic portfolio, because it would be an attempt to co-opt the Italian government more into the European heartland. It's something difficult, given the nature of the political nature of the government led by Giorgia Meloni, in particular, Brothers of Italy, but it's very difficult to corner Meloni at the moment. I realize that it will be probably counterproductive for von der Leyen to adopt a punitive attitude towards Meloni. Also because this would push Italy farther on the right and away from good cooperation climate with Brussels, in general, with the EU Commission. It's difficult to think that just when European foreign policy needs to be stronger, we listen today by Mario Draghi how many things EU has to do to try to survive. Frank. So in this kind of context, it's difficult that you can only count on the Paris-Berlin axis, especially when these two countries are so domestically fragile and in difficult. And for this reason, we have to analyze the situation between Meloni and Ursula von der Leyen.
And you've just written an excellent piece on that, which one can find on ECFR's homepage. It's called something with Keeping Your Frenemies Close, or what was the title of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So basically what you're saying is that Melonization is also a bit of stake with regards to appointment of the new Italian commissioner. Is that it? Because if Ursula von der Leyen says, well, we shouldn't appoint the candidate from Italy, that could lead to maybe Meloni moving sort of away from the center. Is that also the point?
Yeah, exactly. I think that in some way, Meloni remains very ambiguous, because there are some things that are the demonstration that Meloni remains a little bit populist. Giorgia Meloni finds herself between two contrasting political currents, we can say, within the Western system. On one end, the traditional political forces that are making a comeback in the last 2 months, with figures such Ursula von der Leyen or Kamala Harris in the US, etc. On the other side, anti-establishment populist forces are trying to organize themselves, but there are no longer seen as a sort of unstoppable force, in the West. And Meloni is trying to navigating these two political currents, because Meloni's role as head of one of the major European governments, in some way, this situation is forcing her to pragmatism and to moderation. But on the other side, her decision to not support von der Leyen is already creating political tension and political risk between Brussels and Rome, but not only, also in Italy, particularly because in Forza Italia, that is part of EPP party at the European level, are not agreeing with this. This is creating a fracture inside the Italian government, and the Italian government seems very, very, very strong, because Meloni is very strong compared to other government, but this is creating some problems. And now Forza Italia is asking something different from the past, is creating problem inside the coalition, and there are significant implications for both her government and the Italian economy, for example, because also the business community is asking for a strong relation between Rome and Brussels, because the Italian economy needs, etc. So there are some ambiguities that Meloni should solve, but I think that this didn't happen before the election of Trump or Kamala Harris in the US. I think this is the discrimination.
We'll get back to Trump, and just to our listeners, we should know by Wednesday who will then become Italy's commissioner, and obviously also France commissioner. What we know about France, we also know about Denmark, but we don't know of the portfolio that the various commission candidates will get. But let's move to you, Célia, with regards to the European game you mentioned earlier, also with the European Parliament, and now the split of the right into three groups. Could you just elaborate on that, and particularly also the role of Marine Le Pen?
Yes, I think there was a contradictory lesson that came out of the snap elections, of both the European election and snap elections, which altogether was this electoral moment for the national rally, is that at the same time as they were unable to be in a position to govern France, so it was a failure, at the same time they gained seats in both elections in large number. And now the National Rally is the first political group in the French National Assembly. It is also the first political group in Europe, in the European Parliament. All in all, if you consider what is National Rally at the moment, is the number one single political party in Europe. Because of the number of French MEPs in the European Parliament, and because of the sheer number of member of Parliament in the National Assembly. And this gives them some institutional gravitas, which has been represented by the fact that Jordan Bardella was chosen to lead the Patriots for Europe, which is the new far-right grouping that puts together not only the National Rally, but also Fidesz, Viktor Orban's Fidesz, and the FPO, or the Czech ANO, and all of that together. And they are together, they constitute a sort of counterbalance force to ECR, that together they are already the third political force. They are just ahead of ECR, unless ECR was to gather more votes. But they also, because ECR, as Arturo explained, is also led by Meloni in a more pragmatic way, and is seeking political influence, the Patriots for Europe can serve as pure opposition, and very, very much along the line of Viktor Orban, the sort of existential opposition to whatever, the big majority that goes from the left to the right that brought von der Leyen to be to a second term at the European Commission. On the opposite side, Patriots for Europe can behave and portray themselves as pure opposition. They can be opposition on, the migration pact. They can be opposition on the Green Deal. They can be opposition on Ukraine, obviously. And Bardella, failing to become prime minister in France, yet finds himself at the head or at the the voice of this new grouping, and so with a sort of a decoupled increased power on the European level. Similarly, he also joined the Foreign Affairs Committee within the European Parliament, so he's also increasing his own exposure to international affairs, foreign policy, and sort of getting more credibility for the next time around when he goes back and turns back to French national politics. So I would say the lessons for the national. So while this is sort of a successful European game, at the same time as you have seen the successful European game, you've seen the French rally at, again, 70% of the French being able to cast a vote in pure opposition of the national rally, because a large part of them accepted whoever was the candidate against the national rally. You had seen a lot of triangle second turn into dual, because they, the centrist camp decided to let the left coalition fight it against the far right, or vice versa. And so you've had a lot of French people who just went out and did not vote for the candidate they chose, but against the national rally. And so you have, I think, those double lessons that intrinsically there is still a very strong barrier to power on the French level, while the sort of European game is getting more and more successful for national rally.
And you mentioned the ECR, that's obviously where Meloni is. Just explain to us, Arturo, I mean, the chances ever of Le Pen and Meloni sort of teaming up, not necessarily in one group, but at least striking some kind of alliance, is that completely unrealistic?
No, it's not unrealistic. It depends from the circumstances, I think, because in talking about the position of Meloni, I think that the decisive factor about a Lepenization of Meloni, because this is our question at the beginning of this meeting. I think that the factor we will have to watch is the U.S. election. No, I'm to the U.S. election. Come back. But this is the real factor that will make the difference, because to be honest, Meloni has remained ambiguous on many issues and continue to be so. We have to understand what is appropriate in the relationship with her. Because by voting against von der Leyen, Meloni seems to be betting on a potential comeback of Donald Trump to the White House, because this comeback, the return of Trump, would allow her ideology to regain centrality in the EU. No? And this is a risky choice by Meloni. But she felt a little bit isolated at the moment, but it's risky, because if Kamala Harris wins, it's likely that Meloni will have to continue her convergence towards the center. But on the other side, if Trump wins, she will be, encouraged to opt for more populistic policies, for more populistic choices, and to act or try to act as a sort of bridge between the United States and EU. No? Well, we can say the cheerleader of Donald Trump in some way. And this is a good reason, this situation, for me, for Europe and for Ursula von der Leyen to pull Italy back on the side before Meloni's ally across the Atlantic, Trump, has the chance to encourage her in the populist direction. So it's better try to have a good relation with Meloni, and we hope that Trump's doesn't win.
So Melonization will then, to a certain state, be decided then in Washington D.C. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. I think yes, because he's a little bit opportunistic, because she remains ambiguous between the two positions. Classic traditional conservatorism on one side, because he's leading the Italy, because we need a good relation with Europe, we need to be part of Europe, etc. At the same time, she remains ambiguous on the relation with Trump. She remains ambiguous on populism, not to support strongly Ursula von der Leyen. Try to have the hands free and try to have a good relation with Orban, with Le Pen, and with the far right. So she's tried to have this role of bridge between the right and the center right and the far right.
Célia, did you want to get in?
Yes,
sure.
Because I think Arturo is really on point on that fact that the US election will matter. For one reason is that one of the core opposition of Meloni's approach and to foreign policy, and including to European policy, and Le Pen's approach, is this relationship to the US. At the core of National Rally's ideology is a very strong anti-Americanism. This is not, completely foreign to some of French impulses, but in the case of the National Rally, which with roots in the collaboration in Second World War and roots in colonial nostalgia. This is an even stronger, fundamental anti-Americanism, because pushing against, American meddling in Europe and rewriting of history that, Europe should not be the lackeys of Americans. Americans are the ones that are separating us from Russia, or this type of ideology, right? So and sometimes it's even more anti-American than it is pro-Russian. It is fundamentally about, against the US, but with one exception, who is Donald Trump himself. Because Donald Trump has this sort of ideology and approach to foreign policy that is itself almost a little bit anti-American. He's the first one to sort of denounce American imperialism in his own way, saying, well, we don't care about the rest of the world. We shouldn't meddle in other people's affairs. He has this sort of respect for, Vladimir Putin and other autocrats around the world. All of that, the National Rally likes and appreciates about Donald Trump. Plus, he has this super extra, sort of conservatism on steroids and extreme provocations on all right-wing matters. So for all of these reasons, Donald Trump gets a pass, and Viktor Orban is a big fan and is a friend. And if he was to win, this would be the only occasion for, patriots for Europe, or this kind of European far right, to get enthusiastic about the US. And therefore, for once, being closer to a Meloni line, which Meloni has been adapted, as far as I understand, and has been pragmatic and working well with Biden, doesn't have this type of reflex anti-Americanism. But for once, if Trump was elected, these two sides would sort of reconvene, and there would be much less contradiction between these two groups on the relationship to the US, which would be clearly in the favor of Meloni, possibly. And as Arturo said, because she's in power, she could be the whisperer of Trump, because the weakness of Le Pen is obviously that she can be as powerful as she wants at the European Parliament. She does not control France. Macron will remain the voice of France, and he's not on the same line. And as long as the National Rally cannot make it into the European Council, they will remain structurally weaker. And so Meloni, in that case, will get strengthened, not Le Pen.
So once again, you confirm that the American election will be extremely important. But moving from Donald Trump to Mario Draghi, Super Mario, Arturo, now that we have this big Draghi day all over Europe, could you just say a few words on how that report has been received, in particular, obviously, by Meloni, if we already have some reactions?
No, to be frank, I didn't see at the moment a reaction from our government. In the past, Meloni was say something very positive on Mario Draghi. We have to remember that that was Mario Draghi to introduce her to the European community in some way. Not only because Mario Draghi was a gentleman, but exactly before the fact that he tried to engage her in a more positive way, in a more pro-European way. And I think that Mario Draghi has at the time some leverage on Meloni and in the work of try to make her acceptable by the European community. So there is a good relation between the two. About the report, I can say that from the presentation I saw today, this morning, and from what I could read in the report, it seems to me that Mario Draghi has captured very well what we geopolitical analysts, experts, and in particular in ECFR, have been saying for years now. That is essentially that European Union has to reduce dependencies because these dependencies are being weaponized by adversary power, by enemy, by China, by Russia, and by other potential competitors. It was, I think, a speech, and I think it was a very geopolitical report. And that this is an important warning from one of the Europe's greatest personalities, essentially saying that economy and politics are closely related in today's international politics. We cannot think of continuing to have a big power role without big investments, without pooling investment capacity, without creating strong innovation, and at the same time removing the barriers that there are for innovation in Europe. Compared to the US, the situation is very clear. We have as Europeans, we have this capacity, but we need to removing the barriers to innovation. And this is a battle we share at the CFR. No? We need the European states, European members to understand this. I think we have to work in the capitals a lot, try to push for this vision. Otherwise, not only we lose our prosperity, our economy, our wellness, but we will also lose, I think, but is the Draghi report that say this, we lose our freedoms because our opponents are mostly autocratic states. So we have to play our game, not the game of our enemies in some way.
Feel free to ask questions in the chat. Célia, I will not ask you a long question about the Draghi report, don't worry. But I would like to ask, I mean, now we have 400 pages by Mario Draghi, but do you think that anybody will be able to act upon the report? I mean, we have now in Germany a rather sort of well, turmoil, I guess one could say, within the government. They can't even hold meetings, and they just lost a number of regional elections. Another one is coming up on the 22nd of September. You just said earlier that, well, yes, we have a prime minister, we don't have a government. What was that, President Macron? But do you think there is any ability or decision-making capacity in France and Germany to deal with this report?
I wouldn't know so much about Germany. The one thing that's striking for me regarding the report is that it is almost the same words used by Draghi as Macron used in his second Sorbonne speech back in April, when Draghi is talking about an existential threat to Europe of the lack of competitiveness, and he's advocating, as Arturo said, investment, including in the tech sector, innovation, etc. It is the same sort of diagnosis and recommendations that Macron developed in his speech when he said basically Europe could die. And it could, at the time, he said Europe is mortal and it could die, not only because of the attack on its east in Ukraine and the security risk, but also because of the the sort of failure of prosperity, and in particular the lack of investments. I don't know if you can still hear me. I had
we can.
Call.
Go ahead.
And yet, so it's the same diagnosis. And when Macron picked Thierry Breton to go again in the European Commission, it's this idea that he would want and push for Breton's portfolio to be expanded to tackle those issues: greater investment, greater support for innovation. And so even if we're going to have a weaker government, or even if there's going to be many domestic turmoils, I think at the European level, the ambition is still the same, has remained the exact same. It's very aligned on Macron's priority. The weakness of the government might mean that on European affairs and foreign policy, Macron will stay strong, actually, because there's not that much competition with either a foreign affairs minister or even the National Assembly, which is going to be busy doing their own thing. The one thing that France is most limited about is money. We have a huge deficit at the moment. We're running, and the whole conversation on the budget is going to be about cuts. It's going to be all of that. So that's the big preoccupation. Less about decision making. In Germany, I think they have the struggle of both the money wise and the decision making wise. So the situation might be a bit dire. But I would bet if any of those recommendations of the Draghi report are to be put into place by the Commission, at least France will be a supporter, as far as I know.
So there are bigger smiles in Paris than in Berlin today. One could imagine. Arturo, going back to you and the question of Ukraine, which we haven't touched upon yet. Any sort of changes or to the overall policy of Meloni with regards to Ukraine over the summer? And do you see sort of changes materializing? We've had also major events at the front line, obviously both in Kursk, but also the eastern front of Ukraine. Do you see any sort of talk in Italy about peace movement or peace agreements, to use that term?
No, there are some rumors about that. There is a plan by Scholz, but I'm not sure what is this kind of plan. So because also Repubblica mentioned the Zelensky plan, but also a proposal by Scholz. But we have to deep this because I'm not sure there is something real concrete about the the Meloni government. It seems to me that the Meloni government is progressively very tired with the situation in Ukraine and with the Russian invasion to Ukraine. Because it's true that Meloni was a great supporter of Zelensky and Kiev from the beginning of the war. It is also true that our public opinion is one of the worst public opinion, I can say, or one of the more in the peaceful camp. And in some way, our government, Meloni government, is not talking, is not explained to the public opinion how is so important the support of Ukraine. And because they are a little bit populist, they are looking at the surveys, and the survey says that people don't want to speak, or don't want to say nothing, don't want to have any idea talking about war in Ukraine. So people want something different. So they try to avoid a real discussion to engage the public opinion. And I think that that now is more and more difficult to explain and to do something concrete towards Ukraine in support of Ukraine. Our public opinion is very cautious, is very pacifist, etc. And Meloni government remains in the middle between supporting with concrete acts, so we sell arms, etc., but only they are imposing now some limitation about the use of the armament we send to Ukraine, and this is very worried. I don't think there is a clear change in the politics, but there is a more cautious attitude towards Ukraine by the Meloni government, dictated by the fact that public opinion is very worried about war, and is very tired to listen about war more in general. But I think that is something that could be put in a sort of exchange inside the European basket between the EU Commission and the Meloni government. I think that is also useful for the Meloni government to take this position now and try to obtain something more in the EU Commission with the negotiation with the EU Commission. In some way, is a part of a big negotiation. But remains the fact that the Italian government is very tired and public opinion is very tired about it.
I'll get back to you. There's a bit of pushback here from who I know is the former Danish ambassador to Italy, but I'll get back to you on that point. I just wanted to ask you, Célia, any sort of change to the French position over the summer with regards to Ukraine?
Ukraine had been a bit out of the public discussion and political discussion, not only because we've gone from one election to the other, because everybody was distracted, thankfully, by the Olympics, during which I must say Ukraine did very well, including the Paralympics, where Ukraine was a major winner with many gold medals. And the conversation has not evolved as much as you could have expected with the national rally gaining ground, partly because the debate took place much earlier during the year, at the moment when Macron gave his press conference at the end of the Ukraine summit in Paris, in which he talked about troops on the ground and provoked a major debate. right after there was a bilateral security agreement that was voted in the National Assembly, which passed, but on which the far right and far left abstained, and which committed France for a long period of time. And so, and after that, I think there was a sort of, political tacit agreement that, we have said that we would be there for the long run. Maybe let's not discuss specifics because, people get angry with specifics. We are on the side of Ukraine, and let's pause it for now. What can happen concretely is that France will have difficulties paying the 3 billion euros that they say they would give to Ukrainians this year. That's going to be very tough on the French budget, for one. Second, no one really wants to open any other conversations such as EU enlargement or other stuff, but they I think Macron at this point, the presidency, feels content with where we are, and unless we would have a radical change of foreign affairs with a new foreign affairs minister, but that is very unlikely because with Michel Barnier, the agreement between Barnier and Macron will be that on the foreign policy defense field, he'll appoint ministers that are highly compatible with Macron. So you are unlikely to see a major change on this either. At least what we can expect is possibly just a more passive attitude. But Macron, is never too shy with speeches. So he will continue the speeches, you can expect that. But possibly a difficulty to put money behind the speeches and to, as it's been the case for a while, and to go beyond speeches. That's possible. But I think the next step to be looked at is whether or not the Americans start shifting, and while they start, and it could be under a Harris presidency as much as under a Trump presidency, and if they do so, and as Arturo pointed out, if the Germans too possibly are prepared to do that, France will be highly tempted to be part of the discussion, possibly to be a hardliner, pro-Ukraine hardliner, a line that they enjoy currently, but will not stay outside of such high-stake negotiations. You can be sure of that. But I would bet on a more passive moment for now until the French governing crisis is a bit behind.
And you need to find the money, as you said. I mean, the budget negotiations will be important also for the Ukraine policy of France. Arturo, you'll get the last word here, and you can respond to, as I said, the former Danish ambassador to Italy and many other sort of positions, because I don't think he's 100%. I don't think he follows 100% your line about Meloni sort of moving towards Trump if he wins. I can see here there's the argument that Italy's defense spending is at the low end. Meloni is having a close relationship to China, or at least attracting investments from China. And finally, I quote, "She is a woman. Trump is not a fan of women leaders." Over to you.
No, clearly Meloni hopes is that Trump wins, I think. It's true that she also had a good feeling, a good relation with Biden, but having Trump would relaunch her very deflated role in the EU at the moment. So Meloni bet on the Trump's winning exactly for this reason. I think she was displaced by how she was excluded by the other leaders in some way. One of the political fear of every Italian government is to be excluded. We want to be part of the big game. We want to sitting at the table. Generally, and more for a nationalistic government as Meloni is. And for this reason, I think that having Trump in Washington at the White House could constitute a good asset for Meloni to play the role of bridge between Brussels and Washington, and to regain centrality. On the other topic the ambassador mentioned, so I totally agree. Meloni went out from the One Belt Road because this was something against the Italian interest, decided by the populistic government of League, Salvini, and Five Star Movement. We didn't obtain nothing from to be part of the One Belt Road, Chinese One Belt Road initiative. But it's true that now Meloni is asking China to have a role in our industry, because our automotive industry is so dependent by the Chinese, as the Germany is, as other European partners are. So we have to find a solution, and I think I'm back once again to what Draghi said. The key word is investment and innovation, because this would be the solution, and so we come back once again to money, what Célia and Lykke mentioned.
Excellent. Thank you so much to both of you for doing this. We will now watch out for who becomes Italy's next commissioner. We will know, as I said, and also the portfolio by Wednesday morning, as far as I'm told. We'll obviously also try to figure out who becomes foreign minister in France and the overall government. We'll follow the money to see what happens in France with regards to the budget, the Draghi report, and, well, as always, we will also follow Donald Trump and hence the American election, because, as you both pointed out, this could be important both for Meloni and for Le Pen, and hence also for Europe. So thank you very much, and thanks to all of those following us, and have a brilliant afternoon and evening.